Well, we're here with Bryant Thomas, direct from the great state of New Hampshire. And Bryant, you were part of the voting in the New Hampshire primary. Any big surprises for you?
Not really. I think the only thing that I saw that surprised me was how well Pete did in the primary. I did not think he would come as close to winning as he did.
What do you think that portends for his future? Is it kind of not a quirk, but it's kind of an isolated case? New Hampshire, doesn't represent the diversity of a lot of other states and other parts of the country. So does this really give him that much of a boost going forward?
Well, I think all the candidates are in the same boat on that one. Bernie Sanders had more than 60% of the vote last time. This time he got 40. So everything is different this time because there's so many more candidates. You don't have just two like they had in 2016.
Now, you were at the polling place in Rochester, New Hampshire. Any sense of excitement or what people were concerned about or indifference or enthusiasm? What was your reading on the tone of the voters?
They were pretty low key, but they were determined to go in there and vote, just like they were 4 years ago. And I think that shows that they still take this primary seriously, even though people in other parts of the country don't.
Now, New Hampshire is not the conservative state that it used to be uniformly in the old days because there's so many newcomers moving in, especially people from Massachusetts crossing over the border into especially southern New Hampshire, Nashua, and those parts. So how much has that changed the entire voting trends of the Granite State?
Well, we've gone from red to purple, and a swing state is what we've been probably for a decade or so. So I'm not sure that we'll ever go back to red like we were in the days of William Loeb and Meldrum Thompson, but I think that it's probably here to stay with that influx of people that you mentioned.
Brian, moving beyond New Hampshire and beyond the candidates currently in the running for the presidency, I'm looking at a Bloomberg report, at a Drudge report here on my screen, and according to the Drudge report, the Drudge exclusive, it says in big, bold red lettering, Bloomberg is considering Hillary as a running mate. What do you think of that?
Well, as Judge Judy says, stupid, stupid, stupid. I don't see anything to that at all. I don't think it'll get any traction. Maybe it's just a trial balloon that somebody wants to put out there to see who salutes. I don't think it's going to work. She's still got negatives in the stratosphere, and having two New Yorkers on the ticket doesn't make it in other parts of the country, especially the Deep South.
Well, according to the same Drudge report, Bloomberg's internal polling has showed that a Bloomberg-Hillary ticket would be a formidable force.
Well, we all thought that Hillary was formidable against Donald Trump, too, and look what happened. I think it doesn't do Bloomberg any good in the Rust Belt states that she lost because those folks felt abandoned by her campaign. And I don't know that they're going to belly up to her and say, all is forgiven. I just don't see that happening.
Well, you say, Judge Judy, stupid, 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 but if this is a legitimate report, an accurate report from Bloomberg's own inside sources, as the Drudge report claims, then Bloomberg is not a stupid man. So what do you make of that, if this is a legitimate report?
Well, if it's coming from the Bloomberg camp as something they've already thought over and decided to do, then that's one thing. If it's a trial balloon to see who reacts to this, then that's another. I think we have to wait and find out.
Well, there's been lots of observation of post-election Hillary, and it seems that she is still, it seems to many observers, she is still determined in one way or another to reinsert herself one way or another into the presidency.
Well, the wrinkle in all of this is that you're doing a disservice to all the people who are going to vote in these primaries, because she's not on the ballot.
And he's just entering. He's entering, skipping the initial primaries. So you've got two people that are sort of like skipping or maybe cheating, it might be seen, in order to get to the nomination.
Well, Bloomberg is going to be in Super Tuesday and beyond. So I think skipping the first four was a more logistical thing than it was political, because he just didn't have time to cycle up to engage in all of those four primaries, given the late entry that he made into the race.
Yeah.
So I think the first four didn't really mean anything with Bloomberg, and his concentration on Super Tuesday states and the fact that he's showing up so strongly in national polling indicates that maybe you can buy your way into the presidency.
So you think he has a shot?
Oh yeah, I think there's no question about that. Look at Tom Steyer. He did the same thing, well, on a lesser scale, but again, it was nothing but his money and his relentless advertising that put him on the debate stage.
But he's already fading.
That's true, but he still got there. So the question is how much more money he's going to spend, and clearly Bloomberg can outspend him. And I think that presence of Bloomberg kind of diminishes Steyer's chances, because they come from pretty much the same offstage voice.
It also may be diminishing Biden's chances.
Oh, no doubt about that. I think that we talked about this since the get-go, and that is, if there was a longing out there for someone other than Biden to be the nominee of this Democratic Party this year, then it certainly wasn't going to be Hillary Clinton. And that was the first round of supposition we heard. And I just don't see that happening. I think that if there's going to be a replacement for Biden, it probably has to be from outside the party. Sanders will not run away with the election, with the primary results in Super Tuesday states like he did in Iowa and New Hampshire. He won't do that well. He will do well, but it won't be a runaway. And I think that's what's going to really determine who emerges as the top candidate here.
Can Bloomberg make it to the nomination and the presidency without solid support from the minority community? Blacks,
well, yeah, blacks especially. I know the question you're asking. He's apologized for stop and frisk, and it was not recent. The whole policy was back when he was mayor. There's plenty of things in political pasts in this day and age that make people cringe when they hear about it later on. Whether it actually translates into lost votes remains to be seen. There's a lot of things that can play into there's a lot of things that can play into whether a candidate stumbles.
All right, but how about the Fox factor? They're already hitting heavy on his recorded statements at various events where he's talking about the stop and frisk policy, how it's intentionally and effectively aimed at black youth in the ghettos. That's where the crime is, on and on and on. Fox is already hitting heavy on that, plus other conservative sites. So that's going to be blown up. It's going to be played endlessly as he proceeds in this campaign. So how much damage will that do to him?
Well, the people that Fox is playing that to aren't going to vote for him anyway. So I don't see that unless Fox can broaden the appeal to the mainstream voters, to the independents and the disaffected Democrats. I don't see that making any difference at all.
But how much of an impact it will have on depressing his support from the black and minority communities?
Well, look, if blacks don't understand that they've got to support a Democrat or get stuck with 4 more years of Donald Trump, that's a pretty easy choice.
You think they'll make that distinction?
Well, I think they know that that's what's at stake here.
I mean, especially when it's being hyped up so much. This is going to be all over the news, not just on Fox, but these are very dramatic statements by him. And according to your perspective, very incriminating. So, this isn't going to stop. This is probably just the beginning of the attacks on him. So what I'm saying is, we all know now that in this electronic age, the media has a big impact on influencing voters, how they think about a person, how they perceive a candidate. So, they've got the goods on them in this aspect. And, who knows what's going to come next? Since now he's emerging, he's going to be a chief target, is he not?
Well, I think it all depends on whether this stuff sticks. Fox would love it to stick so they can rejigger the entire Democratic field and keep everybody on pins and needles. We'll have to see whether it works. So far, it hasn't hurt him in the polls at all. We'll see what the next round of polls in the coming week produces, and then we'll know whether this is having any effect. If there's no movement in the polls, then Fox can beat their breasts all they want. It's not going to make any difference.
Okay, one last question. Here we are in mid-February. What do your tea leaves show? Who will be the next president of the United States?
Well, Trump is doing everything he can to lose, just as he did before. His base doesn't care. Those 42, 41% will always be with him. But he needs more than that to win. He needs to be up around 48 or 49%, just as he was in 2016, in order to ensure that he will do well in those Rust Belt states. So at this point, it's anybody's guess as to whether Trump will have the wherewithal to shut his mouth and let his record speak for itself, which is what he'd like to do. But he's not given to being quiet, and the more he shoots his mouth off, the bigger the hole gets. Now, for the Democrats, who knows? I think I have serious reservations about Bernie Sanders carrying the battle flag into November. I think that he represents, although he's doing very well in primaries so far, I think Trump will eat him alive, and I just don't see that as a viable option. I think he's much too far to the left, and they're going to wring this Medicare for all stuff around his neck. And people are very sensitive to health care. That's still the number one issue on the minds of all voters across this country. So if you say, I'm going to give you Medicare for all and take away your private insurance, even if they're not going to do it, the Republicans are going to say they're going to do it. And that's going to be hard to overcome.
Brian,
so
my reading on it is this: although there are unions and other organizations where the members really like their health care program very much, that's not typical of the entire population. Most people, I think, from what I could observe, are very dissatisfied with their health care plans because they say that they're getting less and less and paying more and more. So therefore, I don't know if that's going to be such an albatross around Sanders' neck.
Well, it depends on how it's framed. If it's saying we're going to give it to you whether you like it or not, that's a mistake. There are plenty of people in this country who have private health insurance who are very satisfied with it. Some of the Obamacare people from the Affordable Care Act are not so satisfied because premiums keep rising. So the wrinkle will be whether they can fix the Affordable Care Act, bring the cost down, ensure that pre-existing conditions are taken care of, and that some of the basic health screening procedures are included in all these plans so that people don't have to be nickeled and dimed just to get checked out.
All right, if anyone who's now in the race among the Democrats gets the nomination, let's not speculate on who's most probably going to get the nomination, but assuming that any one of them currently in the race can get the nomination, who is most in the strongest position to beat Trump?
Bloomberg. I think that there's no question about that at this point.
Because,
now, he may falter, and second to him, I would say Mayor Pete.
Okay, but why Bloomberg?
I think he represents somebody who's not part of the Washington mess. Trump was elected on much of the same platform, because I can go in there and fix it. No one else can fix it. Only I can fix it. And people bought that. Well, they bought a pig in a poke. And I think that, looking to the parties internally to provide relief from the mess that we have in Washington is something that voters don't have a lot of patience for right now.
So you don't think that Bloomberg is going to be hung with the labels of New York billionaire, very oriented towards the corporate world and not the working and middle classes?
Well, I think he's gotten a lot of that out of the way already by what he's done, privately with his foundations and things like that. So that kind of falls on deaf ears given what he's done with expanding healthcare in New York and things like that. So I think that if they're going to go after him, it's got to be on something such as stop and frisk or redlining.
Which they are doing in spades.
And if it's not, if that doesn't do it, then he may be, in a Teflon position.
All right. So Bloomberg has the nomination. You're predicting that he will beat Trump.
I think he's got the best chance of any Democrat to beat Trump. I'm not going to say anybody has a sure bet to beat Donald Trump. He's going to be the nastiest campaigner you've ever seen in your life. Why not? He's been emboldened by all the impeachment and all the support he's getting from the party, regardless of how it's occurring. And he's going to milk that for everything he can.
All right. We'll see. Bryant Thomas speaking to us directly from the state of New Hampshire. Thanks for joining us.
You bet.